Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to talk about stylistics. In stylistics, two of the concepts or ideas that we are going to talk about today is reader response theory and secondly affective stylistics. If you remember in my last lectures I have already talked about that stylistics it came out of formalism, new criticism or structuralism. And formalism it talks about words on the page. New criticism it talks about words on the page. It means that we were supposed to look at the formal properties of language on a piece of paper to see that how language is performing, to see what kind of meanings language is giving us, and to find out the meanings of the text on the page. Previously, we have also read or talked about that biographical criticism, where we try to understand the age of the author in which the author was living, what he or she was influenced by. So, of course, authors they are the product of their society and they are influenced by the political, the social ideas, ideologies, problems, and issues. So, in this way, people try to understand that whatever they have produced, they try to understand that they were affected by their own age, they were affected by their own environment. So, they were talking about almost the same problems and same things in their texts. Then, essays like Death of the Author, it also played a very important role. So people they thought since the author has died, there is no need to find out the hidden agenda of the author because we cannot take the interview of the author. So how can we come to know? How can we be so sure that this is what the author wanted to say? Today we cannot take the interview of the author. We cannot go to the grave and take his interview or her interview, and we can in this way find out what exactly the author wanted to write in a piece of literary text that we are reading today or that we are analyzing today. Therefore, all these things were left behind. Then there was another concept, that is affective fallacy. It meant that the author, when they produce text, and the readers, when they are reading such type of text, they are affected by the ideas which are there on a piece of paper. So we should not be talking about the readers' ideas, readers' emotions and feelings. So they should also be left, and we should not be talking about the author, we should not be talking about the reader. But again, the change came. Wolfgang Iser, Stanley and Rosenblatt, they are the proponents of reader response theory. They are the proponents of affective stylistics. So they are of the view that how can we eliminate the role of the reader? Because reader is there, reader is the one who is going to read the text. Otherwise, the text which is there in space, how can it give us meanings? So, affective stylistics is derived from analyzing the notion that a literary text is an event that occurs in time, that comes into being as it is read. So, once you start reading the text comes into being. So it is not just an object which exists in space. So text is examined closely. So one of the techniques that is used for analyzing the text is called close reading of the text. That very minutely you will have to read and understand each and every property of language which is there on the text, which is there on a piece of paper. Try to understand the kinds of metaphors, similes, irony, and so many other literary devices that the authors they have made use of. Synecdoche, okay, metonymy, and see that what is the relationship of these words with the language that you understand and with the environment in which you are living today. So use your cognitive abilities and then try to understand the text. So role of the reader cannot be eliminated according to Rosenblatt and Wolfgang Iser. So we will have to study that what is the role of the author, how the author is processing the text, because the reader, how the reader is processing the text, because the reader is in process of reading the text. So here the reader is trying to understand that what is there on a piece of paper. So when reader is reading, reader has got his ability here, cognitive ability that he is going to apply on the text to understand the meanings of the text which are residing in the text. Reader has got his feelings and emotions. Reader has got his ideas, her ideas. Reader has got his own or her own ability to understand the text. In the past, stylistics or formalism, they were trying to find out the objective analysis of the text. They were trying to understand. They were trying to read the text objectively, as if that all the people who are going to read the text would reach the same conclusion, which is not humanly possible. We should understand that all the readers, when they are reading the text, they have got their own ideas, they have got their own feelings and emotions, and these feelings and emotions and these ideas cannot be eliminated from the reader. So reader, when he comes across different kinds of gaps in the text, when he comes across different kinds of plots, different kinds of stories, stories within stories, characters, ideas which are there on a piece of paper in the text. So reader is going to interact with the text. Reader is going to show resistance to the text. Reader is going to understand the text. So role of the reader cannot be eliminated because reader is applying his or her own abilities, cognitive abilities on the text. So this approach is transactional because you are going to do a transaction as a reader between the text and the reader. No doubt we cannot say it is an objective analysis. It is very much subjective because reader's own understanding, reader's own ideas, they are involved. So when the reader is interpreting the text, it is quite subjective analysis that reader is going to do. So teachers are supposed to make students understand. Teachers are supposed to share a piece of literary text with the students, and then teachers are supposed to ask the students that what do you feel after reading this paragraph? What do you feel after reading the 3 or 4 paragraphs? After reading about this character, the character who is a flat character, the character who is a round character, and then how do you react? What kind of transaction goes on in your mind? And what do you understand by this particular word which is there in the text? So students, of course, they will apply their cognitive abilities, their own ideas, along with the ideas which are there in the text. And the students are going to interact with the text. So then they will be able to give their own response. So that response is called student's response. That response is called reader's response. So text is no more considered an autonomous piece of text. So readers, they are going through a process. So their mind is processing the text. Their mind is trying to understand the text. And readers are applying their cognitive abilities on it. And in this way, they are going to understand that what the text is saying. So Stanley Fish, he talks about that text is a structured thing, and he describes that the structure of the reader response as it occurs from moment to moment, not from the structure of the text we might assemble, but from moment to moment. How do you read? How do you respond? What do you understand? Whether you are affected by the ideas which are there in the text or not. And once you are affected by the ideas, by the feelings and emotions which are there in the text, how do you respond? So Stanley Fish talks about the things which are going on inside the mind of the reader. So he was a proponent of affective stylistics. That reader is affected by the text. Reader is affected by the literary or non-literary text that he or she is reading. And then of course, you are trying to understand and you are going to give your response. At the same time, I will say that it is not a 100% subjective response, that anything goes story. It is not anything goes story. That any kind of response a reader can give will be accepted, that it is a good kind of response. No. Once the reader is applying his or her abilities on the text, the reader is doing a transaction with the text. The reader is trying to understand the text. The reader is going to support the ideas which are there in the text, or the reader is going to resist the ideas which are there in the text, or the linguistic context which is there, the kind of words which are there, the kind of metaphors and similes which are there. The reader is going to interact with all of them, and then and only then the reader is going to give the response. So it is not 100% subjective response, no doubt. Still it is quite subjective, but that subjectivity or that response that the reader is giving, it is coming out of the text, having interacted with the text, having gone through its metaphorical, its denotative and connotative meanings, and then process them, all of them in the mind. The reader is interacting with the text and reader is going to give his or her response. So today we have talked about two kinds of theories, reader response theory and affective stylistics, and they are very much related. First of all, we cannot eliminate the role of the reader. If there is no reader, how can text give us the meaning? So once the reader is there to read the text, the reader is going to give us the response, that what he or she understands from the text. And of course, the reader is affected by the ideas. Sometimes he is or she is going to support the ideas, and sometimes he or she is going to resist the ideas which are there in the text. So once the reader is affected here, the reader is going to give us the response. So we call it affective stylistics. Thank you very much.